In any case, Zaki is here. I'm going to let him in and apologize because I should have known. He's cool. He must live out in the West Coast. He does stuff with movies. And, it's not that hard to say the word Eastern, and I did not do it. Zaki Hasan, everybody. How are you?
Hey, Cliff, thanks so much for having me.
Of course, man. Now I feel like a jerk. I'm
Oh,
sorry
please
about
don't.
that.
No, I didn't ask, so it's just hey, but hopefully better late than never.
So
Hopefully.
you're saying it was don't ask, don't tell here, and we both
unintentionally, yeah.
unintentionally. Well, you still look, obviously for you, you're used to this stuff. You got the cool shirt on. I can see that. The hair is looking good.
I
You got
appreciate
the LA look going on. I'm going to read you Zaki's bio because it's pretty cool. Zaki Hasan is an award-winning media scholar and critic. Let's see if I can read, Zaki. Critic of more than 25 years. His film and television reviews have appeared in the San Francisco Chronicle, The Wrap, IGN, Birth, Movies, Death. That sounds kind of cool. HuffPost, Philly Weekly. Wow, even a lot of stuff. Fandor, and he hosts the Movie Film Podcast with TV. I was listening to that the other day, by the way. That's when I thought of having you on with Brian Hall. He also co-wrote Geek Wisdom, The Sacred Teachings of Nerd Culture. Well, you're going to have to tell us about that. It's contributed to books on the Star Wars, Star Trek, Planet of Apes, and Blade Runner franchises. Dude, you've covered everything I like in the world. All right. Well, listen, I had you on in some sense to talk about Gladiator 2 because I heard you talking about that on there, and it's funny. I had a similar take to you on that. As the original one, I like to say to people to me is a 12 out of 10, and I kind of would say the second one is more of a 8.5. Out of 10. I think you guys gave it a B minus. Like I give it more of a B to a B plus. So maybe,
Yeah.
but why not? First, why don't we do this? We'll move on to all the cool stuff you do, but you also comment on things politically. I see on there. I don't know if you're comfortable doing that as a general factor. I think you are because I feel like I've seen it on Twitter and
Yeah, absolutely.
Blue Sky. Are you in LA?
I'm in the Bay Area.
Oh, you're in Bay Area. Okay. So what's the feelings of somebody out there who saw all this insanity happen and Trump win and, any number of other negative things occur on election day and where our sad little country is right now?
Yeah, I try to bear in mind that the Bay Area is sort of this progressive bubble, and I'm conscious of how I feel about all of this and just the people. Obviously I'm in academia, so I know that that's going to lean a certain way as well, and so I would say that it's deeply frustrating, it's deeply confusing, but by virtue of the fact, I grew up in the Midwest, and I have plenty of friends and family still out there, and this past summer I was
Where'd you grow up?
Chicago.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was this past summer, I was surprised by how many of my old friends were diehard MAGA guys and really so I suspected it. This is my only point. What happened on election night was disappointing. It was not surprising to me because I felt like I had been reading the tea leaves for a while. So even with Kamala Harris coming on, and the enthusiasm on our side, I was like, I think the Bay Area is a bubble, and I'm not taking that for granted. And so I'm supremely disappointed, but I was not surprised at all.
Yeah, I thought she was going to win only because I knew these individual little things that were happening that were worrying me. Right, I knew there were some people that I had known that voted for Biden last time, and now they were sort of Republicans, but they had voted for Biden. We're like, well, maybe, Kamala Harris didn't have a real primary. I was like, oh, give me a break. The things they would find to say meant me know that let me understand that right-wing media was reaching them with all of this garbage, and that there were bigger forces out there. I still thought we were going to win, but yes, I knew, and obviously I didn't know till after. And more recently, like every incumbent party in the world's been losing. People I don't think ever fully recovered from COVID. I think it isolated a lot of people. I think there was mental illness went along with that. And I think some of that led to some of this, because I think when you become isolated, you become angry and resentful. And Um, who knows? I mean, there's plenty of other factors too, but I didn't want to go into it deeply with you. But well, no, not because just because like I didn't tell you the right time to come on, and I'm so interested in hearing what you have to say about. I mean, you must see a lot of these themes, obviously. It's not that hard to see, let's say, when you see Star Wars, you're like, hey, look, stormtroopers. Wow, where'd they get that name from? Or, like X-Men. Where'd they come up with that? Like, was any of that an interest to you in getting into this? I mean, did social justice play any role in it, or was it all just like you just thought this stuff was really cool, which is a completely awesome and as good answer. I'm just wondering.
That is such a great question. I don't know that I've ever thought about it in that way. I'd like to believe that my, you know, just the way I view the world and my relationship with other people is at least partly affected by, the pop culture that I've internalized, and the concepts. I was just talking to somebody yesterday about, and if you know me at all, you know how much I love Superman. I got Batman behind me, but Superman is still my boy.
Okay.
And somebody was like, why Superman? And I was like, because what he models is decency. His greatest power is that he can do everything and he uses it to help people. And
Yeah.
I'm like, if that's not a lesson any of us can learn, which is we all have our skills, we have things we can do. Use what you can do to help other people, and that's something I've grown
No,
up
I mean, that is a
admiring.
good way to do it. Whereas Batman is the vengeful. I'm just putting your name in here because there are people who are asking. Folks, I don't always put the names of guests in the. Maybe I should start doing that again. I'm learning like everybody else on the fly in the descriptions, and I probably should. So I'm going to make sure I spell it right. And I don't know, Jim, you should be able to, if you be able to find. Oh, there we go. Look, Jim always beats me to everything. No, I put up the wrong thing. There you go. Media critic,
Wow.
author. Look at all these places you can find him. And I
It's
read you
terrifying.
exactly. You can find him. I've read you the things. I mean, I didn't just discover this guy by accident. Now I love all this stuff. So I am a big movie fan. I am a big, Marvel universe, DC universe. Maybe wasn't always as good, but some aspects of it have been awesome. And some of the Marvel ones. Geez, I saw the new one. What's it called? Got like a 9% Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, the Craven, the new one.
Yeah,
Craven the
I hope
Hunter.
it's not that bad. Because
I'm
we're
I'm
gonna go
seeing
see
it.
it.
I'm seeing it tonight, so I'll let you know.
You have to let me know. Um, so okay, so you love all that stuff. What is your favorite kind of? Do you have a favorite genre? I mean, is it more of the comic book movies? Is it more of an action movie like a Gladiator type thing? Like, what's your? You obviously love Superman, but what's your real?
Whenever people ask me what's my favorite kind of movie, the answer I give, and I promise this is not a cop out answer, it's the truth. I like good movies. So in other words, I'm willing to go into any genre and be pulled in, and I love that experience. So
Yep.
obviously the stuff, I have an affinity for the sci-fi and whatnot, but I mean there's plenty of not great stuff there, but there's no better experience for me than to go into a movie with no idea what to expect, or maybe even be like, I don't know about this, and walk
Right.
out being like, whew, that blew my hair back. That's the best
Yeah.
feeling in the world.
Yeah, I have to admit, like, I have a soft spot for in these movies. First of all, I love like the ones, what I've liked about the Marvel universe is when they've taken risks,
Yeah.
and they've done something like, when you get like a Logan, you know what I mean? When they feel
Hmm.
like, okay, that's actually a Western sort of, and it's sad, and oh, he happens to be a superhero, as
Right.
opposed to, when they've done those kind of things. I gotta tell you what, still my favorite, and it will be, is Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Sure.
And what I
Absolutely.
love about that, especially in this moment, right, is you've got this negative force in your own government, this almost like this parasite that's been there forever, that is working against the people. This sense of paranoia is in the air. And I love those 70s movies like The Parallax View. Great little story here. 3 Days of the Condor was filmed in Peter Cooper Village, New York City, where I grew up.
Wow.
So I do not remember this, but I've been told they filmed this, not the whole thing, but there was this big scene when Max von Sydow is trying to take him out with a rifle, if you remember that.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
goes up into an apartment building, gets in an elevator, and he's trying to avoid him. That was filmed. We're in the area, literally in one of the buildings next to the one I grew up in. And, Robert Redford's just kind of wandering around Peter Cooper. And apparently my parents took me out there. I think I was 3, something like
Wow.
that,
Wow.
and we saw him. And that's what I loved about The Winter Soldier is that in a callback to that, they were making quite obvious what kind of movie this is supposed to be.
Yeah.
This a spy thriller in a way, like one where you don't trust your own government, you don't know who's against you. And they cast, of course, Robert Redford in one of the main roles in that movie, and I loved it. And I loved the gunfights, okay, whatever. I love the kind of martial arts fighting scenes. That is my favorite in movies. So it's funny because we have a debate in my family. My kid, when my older son loves, Tony Stark. I'm like, Tony Stark's awesome. I like, and by the way, Elon Musk is nothing close to that. So
Right.
everybody who fell for that, like me, not that. He'd be like Tony Stark, but if Tony Stark got about 45% more pale, put on about 215 pounds, didn't have the armor on, and tried to listen into everybody's conversations and screamed and yelled at them and told them that he was right and they were wrong. Oh, and if he'd made his money off of apartheid. Okay, so now we can move on. But he loved, he loves that. But to me, and not to say I don't love that character, and that character arc definitely in the final movie was incredible. But I love those scenes, like those scenes in The Winter Soldier and other stuff where he's jumping over the car and kicking the knife out of his hand, and they're going back and forth. And I don't know, it's probably why I like the John Wick movies. It's probably why I like Black Panther a lot. Is up there almost with that movie with me. I like those kinds of fight scenes, and so those get me more. So I love that movie. That that's kind of an example for me. And
Winter Soldier is kind of the best one of those. Certainly the first few batches of those MCU movies.
Yeah. I mean, again, and I'm not, everybody gets the right to their opinion. They don't have to agree with me, but that one will always be there for me. Okay. So here we go. Somebody's saying Russell Crowe has really let himself go since Gladiator. The thing about Russell Crowe is at least it used to be that much like Robert De Niro, he would switch up for every role. The amazing transformation from when he did The Insider, where he put on a whole bunch of weight to look like the character, and then got into this buff, guy that was going to beat you down in the arena. And I think, if I'm right, The Insider was a year before the Gladiator.
Yeah, he went from one right to the next. Yeah.
So, that transformation, it makes me think of De Niro in Cape Fear, or where he's muscular as hell, or, in when he played Pacino in The Untouchables and put on a bunch of weight, same kind of thing. So in case, again, Gladiator is an all-time great to me, up there with The Godfathers, up there with Apocalypse Now, up there, I mean, I love it. And it sounded like from what you were saying, you're on your podcast, you're in the same place. Is that right?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. My co-host Brian and I, we actually recorded a commentary track for the first Gladiator just before seeing the second one. And so, that was actually a great experience of just really being able to go through and talk through, the things that jumped out at us. And it really, I remember watching that movie opening night, and I was probably 20. I was 20 going on 21. And it really, it knocked me on my feet, because it was something that it was the type of movie we weren't really seeing a ton of. I think there had been Braveheart a couple of years before that, but those big sort of sword and sandal type thing, right? Gladiator brought it back for a couple of years there, and so it's a masterclass of the type of movie that was being made at that era. And I don't, even Gladiator 2, which I think is effective, and we have many of the same people involved. It's not on the same tier to me as the first one. And it can't be, it can't be.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. So, because I have certain biases, right? I told you, I mean, the sort of, I mean, it's not the same thing as the martial arts to me, but sword fighting, that kind of stuff, that all appeals to me. I'm a guy who went to the point of never got my dissertation, as I love to point out, but PhD history level, Roman history, I love. We were actually there my family this summer, and like it was so cool to see the second one after we just. I mean, I've been to Rome before, but it's been a while. After seeing the Colosseum again and all of that, and then of course there's the parallels to what we're dealing with here, bread and circuses and leaders using, here it may be the WWE instead of Gladiator, but it's the same kind of, bravado and take people's attention away from the real problems of the poor and the suffering with all the tough macho kind of, circuses. I mean, spectacles that Trump creates and all that. So, okay. So even the first one, because, Bush in office, who wasn't Trump, but was really bad, and all that. So I have a natural affinity, but I was going to tell you, like, I was going to ask you from your perspective, what makes that movie so amazing? Because I feel like I know the reasons I do, but I'm not a film critic like you. So what makes it rise above other films of that ilk? Because I can't answer that question. I mean, I can in individual parts, like I just did, but I don't know if I can as a whole. And maybe you can.
Well, I can certainly offer my perspective. Yeah, I think the framework that the story exists, the story is hung on, is a pretty familiar story. It's not really reinventing the wheel. I've said in the past, if you watch Ben-Hur, very very similar to Gladiator. The Count of Monte Cristo, very very similar to it's familiar, and I think that's part of its appeal. What makes it distinctive is, well, two things. Number one, we were just talking about Russell Crowe. I think you have anyone else but Russell Crowe in that movie, I don't know if it works as well as it does. They had offered it to Mel Gibson, and I mean, this is pre current day.
So it wouldn't have been Mel Gibson as he's being struck down saying Jews have caused all the wars in the world.
Yeah, a couple years before that, and he turned it down. He did The Patriot that year, and he, he's fine in that movie. But I definitely think the right person got it, and actually
was
also
incredible in that role, but definitely
in The Patriot, yeah. And it's weird how
I was going to say I actually do think Mel Gibson was very good in Patriot. I liked him in Lethal Weapon. It's very tough for me to watch him now because I hate him as a human being.
I have to create this mental barrier for anything. Like, I don't watch anything of his recently, but like pretty much all the stuff of his that I used to like, I still like. So I have to kind of create like this iron barrier in my head to be like, that's Martin Riggs. That's not Mel Gibson.
And you know what really pisses me off now is jerk Sylvester Stallone had to go and do the same damn thing. He kept his mouth shut for so long.
Yeah, dude.
He even had come out for some common sense, more moderate policy when I was doing stuff on universal background checks and things like that. Like, he had come out for some of that, and I mean, calls Trump the second George Washington at Mar-a-Lago. I was like,
you're
killing me. And he's got a new, Rocky movie coming out, and like, I don't know that I want to see it anymore. Yeah. And I loved Creed, and the original Rockies, and some of the other stuff he was in. I mean, I never thought he was a particularly terrific actor, but he gave it some oomph to it, and he's shockingly, when he talks, you would think he's not a very bright person, but wrote a lot of those screenplays. And now, I mean, thanks, dude. You got to go Mel Gibson me. So now, like, I mean, I'm just going to go back and watch all the old Schwarzenegger ones, man. He came out harshly and smartly and very in an educated way, even talking about his own dad's experience of how his dad was broken by his association with the Nazi party because he realized how terrible that had been, even though his dad wasn't like a killer or anything. And Schwarzenegger came out and wholeheartedly ripped Trump and endorsed Kamala Harris. So I guess I'm gonna have to pick my action stars. I don't know. You're right. The older ones, like, it's gonna be hard to not watch the original Rocky again or whatever. But I don't want to as much anymore. I didn't mean to get into that political side.
No, it's disappointing. It's definitely disappointing.
But I do think what you're saying, Russell Crowe, from the toughness to even tenderness at times, right? Like, he brought everything to that role.
I think that the very first scene of Gladiator is Russell Crowe as Maximus, looking at a bird and just sort of lost in the moment and the beauty of that. And you see the wonder play on his face before he kind of looks at the battlefield and he hardens. And that right there, and you don't realize it necessarily in that first viewing, but you realize how essential that is to get a beat on the character. And then obviously we have the terrific moment when he discovers his wife and son and got just the snot and
Oh
everything else.
gosh. Yeah. I
You
know.
know, the snot,
Heartbreaking. Gosh.
the
A lot of
snot that
snot.
won him an Oscar. You know,
Yes. A lot of
but
snot and a lot of drool. And
yeah,
yeah.
he went for it. You know, and it's really that's so important, right? Because to me, that entire movie builds up to when he takes his helmet off, he turns and faces Joaquin Phoenix and says, "My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius," and everybody in the audience at that moment is kind of leaning forward. You know, uh,
Among great movie speeches,
yeah, right.
it's a moment. I mean, again, it wasn't really a speech, but sort of like Avengers Assemble, where you just want to get up
Kind
and
of,
cheer.
you know.
I mean, yeah,
We were just talking about Stallone. You know, David Morrell, who wrote First Blood, the novel First Blood,
hmm
he talked about how one of the essential parts of that story that makes it work, and First Blood, both the book and the film are terrific, but
yeah,
Morrell uses the concept of righteous vengeance and the idea that if you push your character hard enough, then we as the audience sort of sign off on whatever that character needs to do in order to exact vengeance because it is righteous.
right,
And I think Gladiator is a great example of that, because what happens to Maximus is so far beyond the pale, and he's shown to us as such a decent person that
right.
we're with him and we're like, boy, just beat the shit out of Commodus, and I think that's why it works. So it is a predictable story, but that's
Right.
why it works. That
And he
that's
does the right thing also in a way
Mhm.
that, like, he wants to give up power in the George
Yeah,
Washington rejecting the crown, and
that's
in
right.
the famous general was based upon Cincinnatus, which the city I'm sitting in right now is actually named after. Who
Wow.
who did not accept, who decided to walk away because it should be a republic
Hmm,
and it should not be an empire. So it
what a
all goes back.
concept.
Yeah, right. Crazy. I'm sure we'll hear that from Trump at some point. Um, so okay, so to me, the second one, and I don't know, guys. I don't want to ruin it if you haven't, if you, yeah, but I don't know what to do here because this makes it tougher. But I will say, everybody knows who's in it. Like, part of, I think there are a lot of great parts of it. Part of it for me, the Pedro Pascal character
Oh,
is
he's so good.
the one that has the charisma
Yeah.
of Maximus, and I don't feel like we maybe saw him enough. I thought he was terrific in the role that he played. Um, but and again, I don't like to. Let's just say that Lucius turning around so quickly and defending him after wanting to destroy him. I know I'm now giving away certain things, but it's hard not to, folks. I hope you saw it, and I hope you will still see it, no matter what. There were some things that and there's always some things in these movies that are hard to believe that somebody has an emotional change so quickly, right? Right. I always think about, like, talk about another one, like the what was it, Batman versus Superman or whatever, and like all he
Mhm.
has to do is hear the name Martha, and it's like
Right.
Ben Affleck wanted to like murder him the whole movie. Now he's like, wait, he's my friend. Um, this sort of felt as unbelievable as that he could turn around so quickly about like, is this how we treat our heroes? I've seen it
Right.
twice now, so but I get it, and I really like it. I just didn't think it had that grand. There, it's sort of like that grand character that you have in Gladiator. The first Gladiator is now split maybe between a few characters in the
Yeah,
second one.
I agree with that.
Um, and Lucilla, I can't think of her name in real life. Oh, Connie Nielsen, she's
Connie
terrific
Nielsen.
as she
Yep,
always is. Wonder Woman's mom, so she made her way from Greek
that's
to
right.
Roman again. Um, and I don't think there's anything else that kind of and look, the Denzel Washington trick, because you kind of think he's going to be like Oliver Reed, maybe, and
Yeah,
maybe he's going to, and I love that too.
yeah,
Um,
they did a good job with that.
so it's sort of for me, the drama slash action movie is my favorite, right? And that could be in the sci-fi realm, or that can be in the, like a Logan, or that can be in the sort of, in just an action movie realm. But like thought about Gladiator, and obviously, there are things that aren't believable. There are things that are. I don't know. Was in the second one, what was up with those monkeys? They looked like wolves almost. And
Yeah, I was like, I don't, I don't think monkeys do that. I that felt like something out of a that felt very sci-fi. That was kind of my realization watching this movie. I'm like, this has as much to do with ancient Rome as as Star Wars does or something. this is like a fantasy world, and I'm like, I just need to divorce myself from any notion of this being reflective of real history and just take it as this is Westeros. It's just
Right.
it's its own. It's the gladiator world, and we're
That's
just
right.
living in it.
There you go. But another, so to give you another one that has that effect on me, again, it may just because it's funny, we were just talking about him, but the lead performer's role is maybe what it is Training Day,
Oh,
where
sure.
I want to, like when I combine drama and action, like I just want to see that movie again and again and again because Denzel Washington is such a tour de force. As
He's
much as you
fantastic.
hate him, he's just amazing, right? I feel like he occupies that role. Again, I'm a novice. You're the pro. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I feel like he inhabits that role in the same manner in which Russell Crowe does in.
Absolutely, yeah. And those movies were just a year apart, I think, right? Gladiator, yeah, because Denzel won the Oscar the year after for Training Day.
Oh, look at that. That's right. They both won the Oscars for those. Well, man,
Yeah.
those are two good years.
So
Um,
you picked up on something.
I guess so. I mean, they those and again, those all had great was Scott Glenn in that. Like they all had great supporting casts. Obviously, Ethan Hawke and
Yeah.
that helped make those movies so good. Um, Other stuff like that you would say is out there in any of these realms that you love
Uh,
right
like
now,
like
or
recent stuff.
yeah, recent movies you've loved that you'd say to people. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're a couple years old, right? We could, as we talked, we were joking earlier about, I think YouTube. They'll probably demonetize me just for saying it. YouTube TV, is like raising its price up to like
Dude,
$84 or.
I'm so mad about that. Can I just
Yeah,
tell you?
so we're joking. We're like, remember because one of my big things that I will talk incessantly about when I talk about politics is our monopoly economy and how it destroys everything from workers to our environment to enriching people to a point where they're dangerous to democracy and
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff. And like we all like, yeah, we can cut the cable cord. Look at that. We're all gonna just watch these apps. There's, it's only $7.99 a month and only whatever. And then of course now, like you have 47 of them and they all cost a lot more than they used to. So it's like I need Amazon,
Yeah.
Disney Plus or whatever plus I can move. Amazon. What am I looking for? What's the second word in there? Whatever it is, their video service. And
Prime Video.
thank you, Prime Video and Disney Plus and Netflix and Hulu and I mean it's like Apple Plus and all of this. It's like it's kind of changed the landscape, let's say, and now
Dude,
it's probably more expensive than it used to be.
I cut the cord exactly 10 years ago, 2014. And at that time I had Prime, Hulu, and Netflix. And so I was looking at about, whatever it was, like $28, something like that. 20 less than $25, I think.
Yeah,
And at this point, between the streaming services and freaking YouTube TV, I'm easily spending more than I was spending on cable 10
yep,
years ago. So boy, they
they got it.
shafted us good.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Don't regulate industries, and they will do this.
Hmm.
Um, so, any case, so we got all these streaming services that we're all overpaying for. What do you recommend that the last couple of years would have been kind of some of your favorites, and even if you want to talk about some stuff out like this year, I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever you got for me.
Oh, I'll tell you, this has been a movie I've been recommending people, and they're like, seriously? But I kid you not, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Is Red One, the new Dwayne
Huh?
Johnson, Chris Evans Christmas movie, which is on Prime Video today.
Okay,
And
I
unfortunately,
like
Dwayne.
both of them, so
Well, this is the thing. I think The Rock's sort of persona has begun to grate on people,
a bit,
and
yeah.
I can definitely see that. And I think this is a movie that actually leans into his persona in a good way. And ultimately, there's a message at its core that I like. And I'm not Christian. I don't celebrate Christmas, but uh, even still, this is a message about Christmas that I find very compelling. And I took all my kids to see it, and they all really enjoyed it. And so I would say give it a shot. I think
Okay,
great banter between Dwayne Johnson and Chris Evans. They're terrific together. Chris Evans clearly having fun. This is I always say this is Johnny Storm era Chris Evans as opposed to Captain America Chris
I
Evans here.
got you, but I love that one too. I mean, that was of
Exactly.
course, seeing the Deadpool movie and
Yeah,
having
right.
them pull that little switcheroo. I mean, they talk about before, I mean, that's probably my favorite movie again, I'm not saying ever. The first
Yeah.
Deadpool is up there
Oh,
with these other things I've talked about, and again, there's drama in that too. There is
yeah.
torture. There is
Yeah.
losing a loved one. There's all sorts of things. But the third one, I mean, just the fun between those two guys, but between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, and then you throw in, and at a certain point, you throw him in too, and it's just like, are you kidding me? The Johnny Storm kind of
Yeah.
character, that was fantastic.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Um,
So there you go. I punned and I didn't even mean it. It was I always want to be like, look at my puns, look at my pun. That's a Sex in the City kind of thing. But yeah. I mean, Chris Evans with those two guys. My gosh, like it's hard to have more fun than that. So that was another one. So I don't know. You may not have brought that one up, but you gave us okay. What's the name of the one you just said? The Christmas one.
no, red one.
Red one. Okay.
Red
Because the
one.
thing
Yeah.
is, I admit it. I'm a little biased against Christmas movies, not because you see a bunch of them and it ends up being like Tim Allen in a fat suit, and after a
Right.
while you're like, okay, I don't know about this, but you know what? I will see this one, and Chris Evans is an easy sale for me. So,
Yeah, you know what I've been telling people about this movie, kind of your point, like, yeah, you sort of think of the Santa Claus with an E, and I'm like, think of this as Men in Black, but it's about Christmas.
oh, okay.
So there's like this whole bureaucracy at the North Pole and how this stuff work, and and it tonally it's very MIB. So it is humorous, but it plays straight with its premise. And I think that's why it worked. It's kind of like a very different. But last year or 2 years ago was a movie called Violent Night with David Harbour as Santa Claus, and it's like Die Hard but with Santa.
How have I not seen that? Okay.
Oh, this is great. So David Harbour is like the John McClane Santa Claus, and again, it's not Elf. It plays straight with its premise. It's funny,
Right.
but they play it straight, and I think I personally think that's sometimes the harder thing to do, as opposed to hanging a lampshade on everything and be like, oh, this is so stupid, right?
Right.
And so I appreciate that. I didn't realize I was going to be like sitting here recommending Christmas movies, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Hey, well, if those are the ones you like, it works for me.
Yeah.
Anything else recently that piqued your interest?
Oh, well, a movie I did not like as much, which I kind of I didn't know that I went in with high expectations, but I was hoping for more. Was the new Lord of the Rings animated movie that's
Okay.
out tonight? Yep. It's called War of the Rohirrim, and it's a good story. And I think that if one enjoys this franchise, it's kind of fun to dip in and sort of hear the music again and see the things that you're familiar with. But it's so cynical. That's what really irked me is even as I was watching it, I was like, why did they make this movie? And as I was watching it, I was like, I'll bet you there's like a rights issue and they just wanted to get something out the door. And then I read up on it. It's like, yeah, that's exactly why, because Warner Brothers was going to lose the rights. So we need to put something out there. And I'm like, I hate that stuff, man. I'm like they put care into it. They put thought into it. So I'm not in any way denigrating the work of the people who made it, but it's just this was not a story that was demanding 2 hours and change to be told. It's
right.
It's literally it's based on something in J.R.R. Tolkien's appendices, and they blew it out into a feature. And I'm like, well, if this is what Lord of the Rings is going to be from now until the end of time,
well, that's a shame. I mean, yeah, don't do that. And again, there's others guilty of that before too.
Sure. Yeah,
that's a disappointment.
Too many of these franchises.
Right. Well, I think they get to a point where they've had so much success. They're like, yeah, we can put a crappy one out, and I'm sure
that's right.
They'll forgive us. We'll make some money, and everybody will be happy.
Yeah.
But okay, so that one we shall avoid. How about one more good one? You got one more good one?
One more good one. Let's. Oh well, Skeleton Crew. That's the new streaming series. I just dropped a review of that at the Chronicle, and we're talking about franchises that are overdone. So maybe Star Wars falls into that. But my feeling with Star Wars is give me something new, give me something different
Right.
within this world. And this show, which is created by John Watts, who directed the recent Spider-Man trilogy,
Right.
clearly he grew up with the same 80s influences as me, and maybe that's why I'm happy as a clam, because it's my partner Brian Hall, he always talks about, like, I love movies that are about the magic in your backyard.
All
And
right. Very
he
cool.
right, like ET and Goonies and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is very much that. It's sort of like you take a little Goonies, you splice it with Flight of the Navigator,
Hmm.
sprinkle it with a little bit of Star Wars. You get some Jude Law in there. That's always a good thing. And
Yep.
and so far, at least, we got something pretty special.
All right. Well, you know what? Yeah, we generally like that stuff's cool because we all have our sort of biases in the family. I've got two boys, myself, my wife, but we all come together on Star Wars. That is
Oh, nice.
something. The Star Wars universe will so that's good. We set time for those. We all come together on the Marvel stuff pretty well too.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'm
my,
falling
my
behind, if I'm being honest, with Marvel. It's just there's been so much. It's like it's hard to keep up.
Well, yeah, there's got to be a point where I think they could have slowed down. There's a little too much out there. So I'm
Hmm.
not saying we've seen
Yeah,
all of it, but we try to when we can. And then there are some Star Trek haters. I won't expose their names in my family. I go
very
I
upsetting.
I watch it and I love it. And I've watched the recent series. I love the one with it has oh come on, oh Pike. When
Oh,
they go back to
Strange New Worlds.
yeah, I love his portrayal of him,
He's so
because you
great.
always heard about, Christopher Pike in the original, and like I just love where, and then you see it in the reboot, obviously of the Star Trek movies, which I liked all of those that J.J. Abrams did, and
I agree.
I generally would have been so skeptical and been like, wait, you're going to try to replace, Leonard Nimoy, and you're going to try to replace like William Shatner and all this, and I mean, man, was that cast brilliantly, and it because
Hmm.
how many other things those guys have all done.
Yep.
I mean, Zoe Saldana now, I love Lioness, which is something I'm watching, which, I would recommend if you like that kind of thing. That's more in the sort of spy, well, not spy, but yeah, CIA operatives kind of realm. She's in that, Nicole Kidman, a few others. Right now, Kirk Acevedo, who is always friendly and on places like Twitter and
Oh, he's great.
is showing up in there, which is pretty cool. Um, Obviously, Chris Pine has been in about a billion things,
Yeah.
and possibly my favorite of all. I mean, what's his face from The Boys? Losing
Oh,
name
Carl
again
Urban.
because I'm old. Carl Urban is amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
the different roles he plays, the accent he takes on there, and the whole thing, and then you'll see him play McCoy, in those Star Trek movies, and sound exactly like him. The
It's
exact
amazing.
I mean, he's so good.
Yeah.
And I mean, even in a small role, was utterly hilarious in the Thor movie. He showed up with like
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
like just
Yeah.
I love Carl Urban and everything. So I mean, man, I mean, again, it had to be a good story. There had to be a lot to it, but the casting was brilliant. I love that reboot. And again, I would have been skeptical of any reboot of
Yeah.
Star Trek, and they did it, and they did it well. And it was cool how they changed the timeline, and so they could have whole new stories.
I agree with you. And if I can add one other thought, you were
You can
talking
add
about
a million thoughts, my friend.
you're talking about Anson Mount as Captain Pike, and obviously we got Chris Pine as Kirk, and I think that, to me, all there's a lot of window dressing that's been changed around with Star Trek and the more recent stuff. Just of necessity, it has to adapt to modern times. But what they've preserved, to me, the most essential thing is the core of doing the right thing, as far as what motivates our characters. I saw somebody on a video online, and they were making a joke about sort of our politics right now. Oh, it was
Yeah,
like a Manosphere video. I think it was Cody Johnson, but it was like, if you want to look at how to act, just look at Star Trek captains. And I found that very funny, because it
yeah.
was, it was amusing, but it's also like, yeah, basically, right? When in doubt, you can do a lot worse than saying, what would Picard do? Or,
No, I mean,
or,
R-
you know,
Roddenberry looked at in the future to what he hoped was an ideal world, right? I mean, it isn't. People try to say, and of course on the right, like, oh, it's communism. It's not communism. If it was
Right.
communism, then it turns into Stalinism. It's socialism. And you can believe in that or not believe in that or whatever. But point being, I'm not even sure it's pure socialism because clearly some people in that universe are wealthier than others. So I don't really
Mhm.
know how it works because it does seem that currency doesn't really seem to exist as much. So, and I'm not sure how it works, right? Like
Yeah.
Picard in I watched the Picard series. He's got a pretty nice place there, maybe he's got a great pension. I don't know, but he's got a pretty nice place there. I have to believe everybody in the universe does not have, or everybody in their federation does not have that same thing. So I don't think it's even pure socialism, but it's at least something closer to our ideal of what we'd like to be as humans.
Right.
Maybe when you came in and the rant I was finishing up about the public good, and forgetting about what democracy is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about all
Right.
of us. It doesn't mean we don't have individual interests and likes. It doesn't mean that we're not still in a system where, yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount where you are trying to earn money because you want to do things, you want to take vacations, you want to do whatever. But we haven't even figured out the basic stuff yet. I mean, we haven't figured out how you get paid family and medical leave for everybody yet. We figured it out.
Right.
80% of people support it. We just can't get it passed.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what I like about that universe. It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody is exactly equal and everybody is, they've taken the individuality out of people and like they're a bunch of drones walking around. Everybody's still individual. Everybody still comes from their own background. They bring interesting things to it, but they see each other as equals. They treat each other with
Right.
respect and they kind of seem to want what is better for all humanity. Like that is the driving force. Um, there
Yeah.
are times where like right now, was where I feel like where we all have our lizard brain and we make those choices or whatever. And even those of us, the best among us, I mean, even my rant when I began, I was talking about the anger for people that voted for Trump,
Yeah.
who voted and I picked three purposely very different groups of people. So I didn't want anybody to think I was picking on any race or any individual. And I also made sure to say I don't feel that way about those entire groups. Like I hope for the best for the majorities of those groups who did in my opinion, the right thing. I'm just not going to sit around and have huge sympathy for people who voted knowing that bad things would happen for them. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I wish I could be better than that at times, and I wish I could, that. And as I said to my friend Tony, who was on earlier, I'll get past that. We do.
Right.
I'm angry right now because people I love have lost rights.
Hmm.
Um, and my country has embarrassed itself on the
Hmm.
international stage, and these are
Yeah.
things that bother me. But but what I like about it is almost like we slip back into being whatever. Like you see that here and there in the Star Trek universe too. I always remember the movie. I think it's with First Contact where you've got Jean-Luc Picard. And one moment, he's talking about how we don't do things for revenge anymore. We don't do that.
Right.
We've risen above that. And I can't remember her name. Black
Oh,
actor.
Alfre Woodard.
Yes, thank you. Who's like, you claim you've risen above it. I see what you're doing. You're trying to get
Hmm.
revenge. This is about revenge. And so even when we've evolved, apparently, 300 years in the future, some of those old traits can still come back and remind us of our past. And so in some ways,
Hmm.
it does show you how far we've come, that most people, it seems most of the time, are trying to do what's best. I don't know. That's the way I see it. Maybe I'm
No, there's a great line in Star Trek Beyond, which is the third one of the reboot movies, where
yeah.
Chris Pine is he's trying to squaring off with Idris Elba as the villain, and he says, uh, he's Idris Elba's like, you're gonna die as you're trying to do this thing to stop me. You're gonna die, and Kirk says, better to die saving lives than live with taking them. And
Yep.
that's one of those lines for 8 years now. It's stayed just nestled in my brain because I think that and hopefully none of us are in a situation that dire, but if you use that as a Northern Star, I think you'll be all right. You
As I
know,
kind of go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, no, I think about that so much. I think about that with, when, when we had the Congress back in the first Trump term, they were voting to take away the Affordable Care Act, and during the height of the pandemic, and the behavior, and I kept thinking about that. I'm like, people are dying because
I know.
of your decisions. How do you live with that? immeasurably, empirically, lives are being lost.
Right,
I don't get it.
you're causing it. I don't know how
Right.
people live with that. Like,
You know?
you're the exact cause. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was only gonna say the one. It's funny that line, and I've seen that movie a couple times, and I hadn't remembered that line. Of course, and this will be trite because I'm sure a lot of people would say they remember this, but for me, it's always the good of the many
Mhm.
outweighs the good of the when
What a
he's
what a
giving his
concept.
life. Yep. First, when he's giving his life in Wrath of Khan, and then when we change the timeline, and it's the opposite.
Oh,
You
that's right.
know,
Yeah. That's right.
they do a great play on that, and it's that. Yes, I'm giving my life because why would I not give my life to save the vast majority of people here, right? Like the good of the many outweighs the good of the few or the good of the one,
Yeah.
and I kind of felt like what you said, if that were people's North Star, how different we would be.
Yeah. You
That's
know,
again, go ahead. Sorry.
no, it's just, I mean, when we talk about the way this election went down, I mean, that's sort of the misery of it, is that we know what's going to happen as a result of his agenda, and it's going to be suffering for a lot of people, and he was very open about that, and people turned a blind eye to that, and that's it's I try not to be frustrated by it, because I try to
You're a better
focus.
man than me. I sometimes
I
cannot be, but it gets to me. It gets to me.
the movie Independence Day, which is, it's not, uh it's it's not Citizen Kane, but I think there's a lot in it that stands the test of time. Although one moment, it's after the president's
That
after Air
speech
Force
was
One is take
awesome.
the speech is great. Oh, it's one of the great ones. But even earlier than that, this is the aliens have attacked, and there's just devastation. The president is in Air Force One, and he's just sitting there contemplative. And I think the character played by Margaret Collins, she comes up to him, and he just says, "A lot of people died today. How many of them didn't have to?" And
Yeah.
this is a president who, in the context of the film, did everything. He did the best he could given all the knowledge he had, and yet he carries that guilt. And I always think about I'm like, Donald Trump is somebody who's incapable of grappling with the question as complex as that.
No. And again, the whether it's Morgan Freeman, whether it's
Yeah,
Michael Douglas, whether I'm trying to think of, Martin Sheen, the people who've played
yeah,
the president in various things I've seen have always had that, moral complexity. They've always had a dark side to them too, and whatever. But they've still understood what their role was, and
hmm,
trying to make the world a better place and trying to make the country a better place. And that's again my reaction to Trump. I mean, I get that. That's it. It's not that even that people voted for a Republican, which would have been bad enough, who is
right,
proposing cuts to Social Security, whatever, which would have angered me. But this isn't even this isn't even a human. This is a creature. I
yeah,
mean, it is a creature that lives for every deadly sin and for whatever pleasures him at any moment, but be it woman, be it money, be it fame, cruelty, because he seems to really get off on that.
yeah,
And how you could look at that, and
hmm,
and again, people who I know have kids, people I know have daughters, people I know have had people rip them off in business, and it's just amazing to me.
yeah.
Um, in any case, so before I let you go, because I do have to go actually drive a son soon, my older son, to his vocal lessons. He's a lead singer in a rock band, which,
Wow, that's awesome.
yep, he's old school too, sort of the 60s classic rock up through, I'd say, grunge and some stuff like that, and just he he, uh, he really is into it, and the band has gotten booked a bunch of places. It's a ton of fun. So
That's
I
amazing.
am, yeah. So what do you leave folks with? Anything you want to say on the way out the door, or in the way in the chair sitting there? Uh, I won't make you walk outside. Is what I'm saying.
um, well, if I can, one last point. I mean, we're talking about in terms of what we feel after the election, and I taught a class Wednesday morning after the election, so 7:30 a.m. So the election
Oh
goes the way it
gosh.
does Tuesday night. So first thing in the morning, I got to go in, and I'm talking to a room full of mainly people who are not feeling great, and the one thing I said to them, and I was saying it to myself as much as anything, I was like, look, the things that matter to you, the things that you're passionate about, that were important to you yesterday morning, the morning of it, they're still important to you today. They still matter to you today. And I was telling my kids, my students, look, work to make change within your sphere of influence, and it'll motivate you to do more. Don't look at everything that's out of your control and feel despair, because that's not helpful. And so that's just, I found that helpful, and maybe that's something that your audience might find useful too. I don't know.
I think they will, and I think that it's incredible. I think you're much more than a movie critic. You're obviously an incredibly good person, but also someone who pretty philosophical too. That's smarter than what I've heard come out of most of the political universe after this. And I
Thank
think
you.
is honestly no, you're welcome. It's a great way of thinking about it. And I very much enjoyed sort of making your acquaintance online, which is always still, to me, maybe I'm
No,
old,
it's
it's
great.
still a little strange how we meet, and like you get a sense of people's personalities, but not fully. And then you still wanted to kind of, after you probably saw some of the nasty things I say to Republicans online and things like that, still wanted to follow me and talk to me. So okay,
Oh, I'm so grateful that we get to chat. It's amazing.
yeah, this is awesome. Seriously. I mean, I feel like, long time coming.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry about how it started, but how it went is really, how the journey went is what matters. And having you here and kind of a combo of movies and politics, I really wanted to do something like this, and you've made it awesome. So everybody go to www.zakiscorner.com. You can check them out there. Anywhere else they should find you?
Yeah, I'm not on Twitter anymore, but otherwise you can find me on social media at Zaki's Corner, Zakis Corner. So Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram. My reviews are at the San Francisco Chronicle and the Wrap, and of course the Movie Film Podcast drops every week, every other week. We do movie commentaries where we talk through a movie that either has an anniversary of some kind or has been suggested by our listeners. Our most recent commentary track is The Rise of Skywalker. We did Star Wars Episode 9, and that just dropped last week for its 5-year anniversary. And then every other week we talk about the new releases, and we just have some fun. And I think it's a good show. We've been doing it for 12 years, so if people want to check it out, please give it a look.
And I can actually give that endorsement, honestly, because I haven't listened. I need to become a regular listener because I love this stuff. But I've listened to at least a half dozen, I want to say, of your episodes.
Hey, that's great.
They've been great. They've been great, and I've loved them. So that sort of added to, like, I must have him on because I've loved seeing what you've had to say about this stuff online. And then I got to hear you probably, I think, shared one of those links in one of your, maybe on Blue Sky or somewhere. I saw it and I clicked on it, and and on the Gladiator stuff, and then I need to listen to more, and I listened to some more. So
great.
I would tell you all, listen to this man. He's smart. He clearly is philosophical, and he knows movies. What more do you want?
Thank you,
Zaki. Seriously, you've been awesome. Thank you for taking the time to be here, and let's do this again.
I'd love that. Thank you, Cliff.
All right, take care, bud.
Bye.